doing the long thing again? Guys, welcome to Plan Today on Tomorrow. My name is Gary Thurman. I'm your host. The name of our company is Guardian Investment Advisors, and we are happy that you are watching us on YouTube, listening to us on the radio this morning. Just to give you a little scoop about us, GIAPlantoday.com, GIAPlantoday.com. It's our great website. You can go in there and check out all of our calculators. We got legacy calculators, tax calculators. We've got calculators everywhere. Risk calculators, which I really like. Better Business Bureau A+ rating. I am joined today by Mr. Bobby Futch and Tim McDermott. Glad they're on the show. We got Tristan, Bridget, Abby, Tanner, Rhonda, and Brogan now up in Knoxville, guys.
That's exciting.
Yeah, excited about getting Knoxville going. So we got a lot of things going on today. And, Bobby, we got a deep conversation about some of our clients not long ago, and we started talking about estate planning. And I think estate planning is a critical part of your retirement plan. Not necessarily, maybe not necessarily for you, but for your wishes, for your family, for things to go the way you want them to go upon your passing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more because, you spent your entire career working to put a financial nest egg together, right? You've used it efficiently through retirement. And then if you don't do estate planning properly, whatever you've managed to save and have left at the end, it could be a mess or disappear.
Big mess. We're going to talk about some messes today.
Mm-hmm.
We picked a few famous people out. I know even here locally, and I'm not going to say any names, but there was a gentleman here locally who owned a big part of Chattanooga. Did not have a trust. Did not have a trust. And just reading in the nutpaper, all the things that went on inside of his estate was kind of crazy. But Tim, let's jump over to you. Let's define estate planning. What all is involved when we're trying to put an estate plan together?
I think that's a phenomenal question. We hear and see all these different events, all over the country that people talk about estate planning, and I think it's misnomered to be financial planning. And finance is part of it, but I'd say the estate planning portion of it is much more of legal documents, right? We talk about your wills. That's the most basic part of it. Your trust. We want to have some power of attorneys for healthcare, for finance, and even like a living will. I guess that's part of the healthcare directive, right? But these are just documents that say, hey, look, after I pass or if I'm incapacitated in any sort, this is what I would like to happen. And it's really helps you and it helps your loved ones understand what your direction and what your goals were at the end of the day. And that can really help in a time that's already tough as it is, and you have less arguments.
I keep thinking of the word control, Bobby. I think it takes stress out of your life because you're in control of what goes on even after the good Lord takes you home.
Yeah, we talk about all the time there are really two reasons, if you want to group them together, why you put an estate plan together. The taxable reasons and then the non-taxable reasons. And we'll talk about the estate tax exemption a little later on in the show. There are less and less people every year that need to have an estate plan put together for tax reasons.
It's gotten so big.
It's gotten so big. I mean, you've got to be worth almost $30 million as a couple. Yeah. But I'd say that's secondary to the non-taxable reasons.
Agreed.
And what you pointed out, Tim, earlier is that you have the financial power of attorneys and you have an advance directive for healthcare. That advance directive is fairly new. It's the living will and kind of who you want to have make those financial decisions all wrapped up into one.
Right.
Man, that's so important because when you use those documents, you hadn't passed away yet.
Yep.
Right? You're either in the hospital or you're incapacitated in some way. You can't care for your own things. So it really helps your family make the decisions you want to have made. And it's really one of the most overlooked parts of it. I would argue for most people, it's the most important.
Oh, really? The estate planning part of it?
I would. Those two, because we mentioned earlier, very few people are going to pay taxes, right? And again, I want to be careful when I say this. Everyone should have a will. I'm not telling you not to have a will.
Right.
Have a will. But the state will have, all the states have what they call intestacy laws. So your family is going to get your stuff.
Yeah, but that's interesting in Tennessee, isn't it?
It is, and it could be a big problem. So the intestacy law in Tennessee. So Tim, you've got a wife, you got 2 kids.
No
right?
will.
And let's pretend like you
Well,
don't
this
have a
show's for you.
will.
That's right. Well, I have a will now, but
Yeah, let's pretend like you don't have a will. And both your kids are well under 18 years old. But the state of Tennessee says because you have 2 kids and a wife and you didn't come see guardian and talk about putting a will together, if something happens to you, your wife and kids all share your estate. So now your wife has a third of what you left behind, and your 2 minor children have the other 2/3.
Okay, you got to do this again, all right? Because I know for some of the listeners out there, they just heard that. What did he just say? So I really let's define that. What you just talked about one more time.
So Tennessee, just like all the other states, has an intestacy law. If you don't have a will, the state will tell you where your stuff goes. And in Tennessee, if you have a wife or a husband and kids, they all split your estate equally. Now, your spouse can get no less than a third. So if you have 3 kids, your wife or your spouse will get a third, and then your other 3 kids get the other 2/3.
So she or he can get no less than a third.
That's right. But think about that. In Tim's situation, his kids are underage,
Right.
So now
they're 1 and 2 years old, and they're going to be really rich for being
So it's going
minors.
to be it's going to be tied up for a while. Is that what we're saying?
there's going to have to be a guardianship and a conservatorship put together at the court, and then the money that the kids did receive is going to be under the purview of the court for 16 and 17 years until they turn 18. And what if your spouse needed that money?
Right.
Now that is only on things that go through probate, right? Like we have designated beneficiaries on our accounts
That's right.
and life insurance and things like that. So most of it would end up in her hands, but a portion of the undesignated things could go to my kids.
That's right.
I'm glad you just brought something up. And how important is it to have life insurance around all of this? I think so many people just don't understand how powerful life insurance actually is, Tim, and it's so inexpensive.
There's, it's funny because we sit in front of quite a few clients here recently that maybe have a life insurance plan, and they sit there and ask us, do we need this life insurance plan? And sometimes we say no.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I can see that.
Because you're at a stage in life where your kids are older, where you don't have any debts, you've got cash that you're going to leave behind, and leaving a legacy may not be at the top of their priority list. But for a lot of folks, it's a very powerful tool. For me, and I think I can speak for Bobby on this one, it's very important for us. We have young kids. We need to leave something behind because if I pass away, that's a good chunk of our household income that's gone. And my wife needs a security to pay off the debts that we have. And
I still carry a
our
mortgage,
kids, right? Yep.
right?
Yeah, you don't want to leave that behind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You'd love to have enough money for her to pay that off.
That's
you
right.
know, tax free.
That's right.
By the way.
But for our retired clients who are in a stage of life, maybe they don't have any debts, maybe they don't necessarily need that life insurance. If your goal is to leave a legacy for your kids, it can be one of the most powerful and one of the best ways to pass money down to the next generation. So I guess it really just depends on what your goals are at the end of the day.
And I do think some life insurance can be missold, Bobby. I think there's certain ways you can do life insurance that maybe is not the smartest way for a person to do.
Yeah, that's right. And that's really in different seasons of life. So I'm young. I carry quite a bit of life insurance. Most of my life insurance is term insurance, though, right? And so it's extremely cheap. Now, I do have a less than a fifth of my life insurance coverage isn't a permanent product.
Right.
I can decide not to pay that later on when my kids are grown, the mortgage is paid off. But why would you want to pay for a whole bunch of permanent life insurance when you're young?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't necessarily need it. Now you're stuck paying these higher premiums.
Yep.
And then, 20 years from now, my kids are grown, my mortgage is paid off. I'm going to go, man, I've thrown a whole bunch of money at these. I don't really want to get rid of them, do I?
Right.
So now I'm stuck paying it or walking away from it. And so for younger folks, it's important to have a good mix of term and maybe some permanent insurance, maybe not at all.
Yep.
I had a conversation with a client of ours the other day, gentlemen, and they asked me about life insurance. And I carry a very large term policy because it's going to last for quite some time. And if I pass away suddenly, then Rhonda's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
She can take care of the business. She can take care of because of that term life insurance policy, and it's pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
But I'll also have a permanent life insurance policy, but it's just I bought it more for long-term care than anything. But there's different ways you can do life insurance. And Tim, it's so important, though, that when people get these wills set up, that they have to make sure they do those health care decisions. I mean, you got to make sure you got somebody being a directive over your health care.
Yeah, I'm kind of revamping mine as we speak, and so I just went through all this documentation and paperwork, and they ask you questions. If all other options have been exhausted, which of these conditions are acceptable, right? And so it tells your family what you want to happen to you, right? I'm kind of one of those people. I don't want to be a vegetable, so just pull the plug and let me go see Jesus. But,
Yeah.
Not everybody is, right?
That's correct.
So you want to make sure that if you're in an incapacitated state, your husband, your wife isn't having to make a really tough decision for you. Right?
And wondering if that's the decision you wanted to have made.
Yeah.
And
But
then-
if you have this set up, then they know.
That's right. And Tim, your parents are still alive. You've got siblings, that sort of thing. So it can get complicated, and that could put a big burden on your wife to make that decision.
Bobby said something a few minutes ago, and he don't let the courts decide for you where your money's going. Make sure you have a will properly set up. Do you need a trust? Don't know. We're going to continue this conversation to see if you actually need a will and a trust. But listen, if you are unsure, you're like, guys, I need to make sure I have this set up properly. All you have to do is text the word legacy, 877-706-7526. It's LEGACY, legacy, to 877-706-7526. We are going to talk about some common mistakes with estate planning when we come back. In the U.S., it takes an average of 12.5 months for families to legally resolve all financial matters after someone passes away. As a financial advisor, I realize how delicate it can be talking about end of life and financial matters. But that is why I'm here, to help make that hard conversation about taking care of your loved ones easier to have. What if your beneficiaries need some funds sooner than 12 months to cover medical expenses, funeral costs, or monthly bills? That's where Guardian Investment Advisors has you covered. There is a financial solution where we would place a portion of your assets you're already planning on leaving to your loved ones into a guaranteed issue life insurance policy. Within 48 hours, these funds can be provided to your family with confirmation from the funeral home. I'm Gary Thurman, CEO of Guardian Investment Advisors. We are your neighbors right here in the Tennessee Valley. Call us today. Your peace of mind starts with a simple conversation. Welcome back to Plan the Day on Tomorrow with Guardian Investment Advisors. I'm your host, Gary Thurman, and it's good to be with you guys today on YouTube, on radio, wherever you are listening to the show. Just another reminder, GIAPlantoday.com, GIAPlantoday.com. We just talked about texting the word legacy. You can actually go on our website and take the quiz as well. So on the top of the website, you'll see 4 different quizzes, our calculators. Legacy is one of them. So again, you can go to our website, GIAPlantoday.com, go to the legacy quiz, or text the word legacy to 877-706-7526. I want to jump into some common mistakes, Bobby. And I've got several printed off over here, but I think we can all talk in general about some things that go wrong. But I think that one of the biggest mistakes is do you need a will? Do you need a trust? Do you need both?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say you need a will, period, full stop. Everyone needs to have a will. Now, that can be enough if your situation isn't very complicated. If most of your assets are what we call non-probate assets, and I think that's important in this conversation. So let's define those terms real quick. A non-probate asset is what it sounds like. It doesn't have to go through the probate process.
Okay.
All right, Bobby, what is that? Usually anything that has a joint owner or has a beneficiary designation on it. Retirement accounts, life insurance. You can put POD or TOD, payable on death or transfer on death designations on bank accounts. That makes those a non-probate asset. And so if you've done a good job putting your estate plan together to avoid probate altogether, maybe a will is fine, right?
Okay.
Now, where a trust comes in handy is, and we're going to talk about a revocable trust because that's what most people think about when they put a trust together. Sure. And the neat thing about that is that can be changed as often and as many times as you want while you're still living. That's why it's called revocable. You can take it back. You can take it back entirely, you can revoke the whole thing, or you can change it, which is cool. Now, most people think of the Rockefellers and all that. Those are irrevocable trusts, and that's a whole different animal. But with a revocable trust, if your assets are owned by your trust, it is also can avoid probate.
Okay.
The neat thing about that is probate only takes place when somebody passes away.
Can we pause and go back to that real quick?
Sure.
So when you say the trust owns the asset, can you define how that actually looks?
Good question.
Does that mean that the trust is actually the name of the asset while they're still living?
That's exactly right. And so the most common example we'd see is like a taxable brokerage account, not a 401k or an IRA, but after-tax money. Right now, you get a statement for yours that says Tim McDermott on the top of it. Well, Tim McDermott owns that. Now, if you were to put a revocable trust together, now your statement would come every month and say the Tim McDermott Revocable Trust.
Right.
And the neat thing about that is, God forbid Tim passes away. Well, Tim didn't own that asset. His trust did. His trust never passes away, so those assets aren't subject to probate. Now, the neat thing about a revocable trust is, Tim, you put one together, there's three parties in any trust. The grantor, that's who puts the stuff in the trust.
Sure.
So in a revocable trust, you're the grantor. You're the trustee. That's the third party that is supposed to manage those assets in that trust in a fiduciary capacity for the beneficiaries. And that's the third party, the beneficiary. Well, the cool thing about Tim's revocable trust is he's the grantor, he's the trustee, and he's the beneficiary, right? So he can make any decision he wants for his benefit. So it really doesn't change how those assets can be used for you. So a lot of people say, well, Bobby, I don't want to put all my money in a trust. What if I need it? Well, if you put it in a revocable trust,
You can take it back out.
you can take it back out. You can make distributions from that trust for your benefit. Because here's the cool thing. You're the beneficiary. You need to ask permission from the trustee to use those assets.
And
Well,
you're
you just go ask yourself if you can use those assets. And that's the way it works. But because you remain in control of those assets, there's no tax benefit to a revocable trust. That's important as to.
That's big. So you know what, Tim? I think another problem or mistake people make. Let's say they have all this set up, and some kind of life event happens, and they don't go make the changes. That could be big.
Yep. This is a pro and a con, right? But one of the biggest mistakes we see, we develop this trust, we spend all this money building out our legal documents, and 5 years down the road, you have grandbabies, right? We don't go back and add them to the trust. They're not part of the trust. They're not part of what's left behind. And so for that reason, Bobby and I usually talk to our clients and say, hey, look, go have these reviewed and updated maybe every 3 to 5 years at the most. Make sure we're updating beneficiaries. What if one child passes before you do? We need to get them off of there and make sure that everything else is updated.
That's not to say that if you have a child or a new grandbaby, wait 3 or 5 years to get it updated.
Correct.
If you have a life event, go change it now.
Yeah.
But, tax law changes all the time. We've been seeing that here in a hurry. So your trust or your estate plan may not operate under the new tax law the way you want it to be, and so you need to make sure it's looked at by a professional.
Agreed.
So, Bob, you just brought up taxes. So, what about not considering taxes or titling of accounts? I mean, that's big.
That is big. Titling of accounts, let's not talk about taxes for a second. I'll come right back to that. Titling of accounts is huge. I'm not going to talk bad about attorneys, but oftentimes they will put together a perfect estate plan for you and then say, okay, it's your job to retitle these assets. Even some high dollar attorneys that I've worked with here in town, they'll say, okay, here's your document. In the very back of that document is a list of things to go look at retitling. They're not going to do that for you.
Nope.
Right? And so you have this great trust you've set up, and there's nothing in it. So you've spent a bunch of money with some attorney
For nothing.
For nothing. So if you want to make sure that your assets are titled, you purchase new real property, for example, you buy a new house. Do you want that to be bought in a trust? If you've got one set up, probably. But the closing attorney's not going to know that. So you got to make sure you do that. Taxes are a big thing in estate planning. Even if you're not worth $30+ million
Right, yeah.
and subject to estate tax, income taxes are huge on qualified accounts that get left to beneficiaries. And so everybody says, they put a trust together. They say, I want to put my IRA or 401k. I want to name the beneficiary my trust. I almost always say, okay, stop. Let's talk about that more.
Yeah.
Because we all know that if you leave an IRA to a living person, a natural person, an actual person, they have to take all that money out in 10 years.
Right.
That can cause an issue for them. If you leave it to a trust and they're not a natural person, that gets cut down to 5 years.
Yep.
And if you have a trust that's irrevocable, which your revocable trust will be after you pass, trusts pay insane income tax rates.
Yeah.
They hit the top bracket of 40%, like $15,000 worth of income. Well, take one R&D, right?
Yeah,
the trust,
you're there.
The trust
You're there.
takes one R&D, and
Yeah.
all of a sudden you're paying 40% income tax.
Yeah.
Was there a reason you didn't leave it to your kids to get that stretch? You can leave IRAs to trust, but in my opinion, there's got to be a really good reason for it.
And Tim, Bobby just brought up attorneys, and we're not talking bad about attorneys, but working with a professional, working with someone who really knows the ins and outs on this, and that's looking at it as a fiduciary, how important is that?
Yeah. Attorneys do a phenomenal job. They understand the legal documents, inside out, but putting it into practical use, funding those trusts, making that part of an actual plan and using it, that's where your advisor comes into play.
Talking about
Where-
who has access, when they have access, what they have access for.
Yep.
It's important.
We're talking about mistakes, guys, and I had to throw this up because it happened not too long ago, but one of my favorite music artists ever was Prince. I mean, the guy was amazing, right? So super talented. Died without a will, $156 million estate, tied up in court for 6 years.
They did a good
What
job
do you
getting
think?
that done in 6 years.
I understand that, but how much did his family have to pay in legal fees and all that? I mean, I don't know what it ended up being, but it didn't end up being 156.
Well, and what a lot of people don't know is if you have an asset that is in your name only and you pass away, that asset is locked up until it goes through probate or enters the trust.
That's right.
So let's just play like that $156 million was all in Prince's name. That's very likely. I don't believe he was married, right?
I don't think so.
And so all of that's locked up, and the family doesn't have access to that for 6 years.
Yeah.
Good grief.
I know. It's a lot. It's crazy. There's a lot of mistakes that are made out there when it comes to wills, trust. Do I need a will? Do I need a trust? Do I need either? We think everybody needs a will. You've heard us say that again today, but you've got to really sit down with some fiduciary advisors that are going to look at your whole plan. Make sure you have it set up right. We can work with your attorney to make sure that the financial part of this is correct, and we're here to help. Something I'd like for you to do, though, got two options here. Go to GIAplantoday.com. Go up to the top right, Legacy Quiz. Take the Legacy Quiz, or from your couch, just text Legacy to 877-706-7526. 877-706-7526, the word Legacy, or again, you can go to GIAplantoday.com. You need to make sure that your will and trust are set up properly. Plan for it now. Don't procrastinate. Life happens. Don't keep putting it off, folks, because we just never know when the good Lord's going to take us home. So we're going to dive into some famous estate planning disasters when we come back. So you guys stay tuned.
You might not be able to retire if you haven't thought about future inflation and future taxes. When you're going through your retirement plan, are you thinking about inflation? Does your current plan have inflation built into it? The national average is about 3%. Of course, it's been really, really high the last few years, but it has come back down. But you got to build inflation into your retirement plan because we don't want to run out of money. Another thing I stress to my clients all the time is we got to think about future taxes. Our government has one source of income, and that is taxes. And I promise you, with $34 trillion in debt, $2 more trillion being added this year in 2024, the interest only on our national debt is $1 trillion. Folks, taxes are going to go up. You got a window of opportunity in 2024 and 2025 while taxes are still on sale. Let's start looking at maybe taking some of your taxable money to tax-free money. This is all part of the Wealth Guard planning process. We'll do this for you when we're creating an income plan. You got to think about inflation, and you got to think about taxes. Give us a call today and come in and see myself and my team, and let's put this plan together for you.
Welcome back to Plan Today on Tomorrow. My name is Gary Thurman, your host. The name of our company is Guardian Investment Advisors. Thanks for being here today. Having some fun, if you want to call it that, talking about estate planning. It's not a lot of fun, but it's just one of the most important factors when it comes to your retirement plan, making sure that the money goes where you want it to go and how you want it to go. And that's what it's all about, and that's what we're trying to help you guys out with today. Invite you to go to GIAplantoday.com, GIAplantoday.com. Up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see 4 quizzes. One is a legacy quiz. Go take it. See if you got your will and trust set up properly. Or text the word legacy to 877-706-7526. We just talked about some common mistakes, Bobby, but on the break, you're like, Gary, I got one more. So why don't you share that?
There's a lot of common mistakes here. And I think one that's important for a lot of folks, especially for us down here in Chattanooga, we're right on the state line. And so there's this terrible thing that can go on called ancillary probate. And what does that mean, Bobby? That means if you own assets in any other state,
Vacation
home, rental property, anything, you have to probate in that jurisdiction as well. So Tim and I met with a couple yesterday. They're getting ready for retirement. They've done really well for themselves. They live here in Chattanooga. They have a condominium down in Georgia, and they have a vacation home in South Carolina, all owned in their individual names.
Wow.
So if those individuals passed away, not only are they going to have to probate here in Hamilton County, then their attorney that's probating here in Hamilton County is going to have to go find an attorney down in Georgia, hire that attorney to probate in Georgia, and also go to South Carolina, hire an attorney in South Carolina to probate in South Carolina. Now you've essentially, I won't say it totally tripled the price, but getting pretty close.
Yeah.
Right? And all those jurisdictions are different, so you're not going to find an estate planning attorney that's going to feel comfortable with running around and probating all of those. You may go hire some giant law firm that has offices in every state.
Right.
That they could do that. But again, just
Cost
cost. So what's the issue, or how do you solve that here, Bobby? Remember we talked earlier about a revocable trust, never passes away. If you have property in another state, I will almost guarantee you that an estate planning attorney is going to say you need a revocable trust and you need to deed those properties over to that trust. That avoids probate because the technical owner, your trust, never passes away. So again, ancillary probate, one we see quite often. I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So we ended that last segment talking about Prince, and it's not funny what he did or what he didn't do. He did not plan. He died without a will, and again, $156 million estate was tied up in court for 6 years. Tim, let's talk about somebody else that's pretty darn famous out there, Aretha Franklin.
Yeah, I know Bobby's done some looking on this one. It's an interesting case all the way around. She had multiple handwritten wills that were kind of found, and so they had to kind of decide which one was the one that was supposed to be in place at the time.
Wow.
That's exact. They found it in her couch cushions.
I didn't know that. Right? That's funny.
And so there you go. That was her filing cabinet. But even more interesting, and that was the last one that they found in her couch cushions was dated 2014.
Okay.
She had, I'll air quotes here for radio listeners, an official will in her safe that was dated 2010. And so the hang up with her family was, she's got this holographic will is what it's called, handwritten. You can do that. Please don't. You can do that. But they were arguing that, listen, this one is handwritten. This doesn't look official, so we should go with the 2010 one. It went to trial and was finally settled in 2023.
So how many years after she passed?
9.
9 years after she passed.
Wow.
Right? Just because she decided to write a couple of holographic wills and hide them in a couch. And again, you can do that. Tennessee does allow that. Please don't, again. You got to go through all kinds of stuff. It's all going to be in your handwriting.
Yeah.
They got to bring in experts that knew you and say, yep, that was Tim's handwriting.
Yep.
There's a better way to do that.
Bobby,
That was a wild
maybe I shouldn't throw this on you, but I'm going to. What is the average cost to get a will done?
It really depends.
It ranges, right?
It does. It's not something you want to cheap out on. I mean, you don't really need to go and spend $10,000 on a simple estate plan. I would say if you just need a will and those 2 power of attorneys, because I would say if you're going to do it, do at least all 3 of them.
Yeah.
$3,000-$4,000 for a married couple.
Right.
Right, and it can get more expensive.
It can.
If you add a revocable trust to that, that's of course going to be a much more involved process. It's not so common anymore, but it used to be fairly common that people would set up an irrevocable trust for life insurance, called an ILIT, or an irrevocable life insurance trust. Again, that was for tax reasons mostly, but I'd say you could probably get a good estate plan done for $2,000-$3,000.
Okay, gotcha. So, Tim, we talked about Prince. We talked about Aretha Franklin. What about Howard Hughes? This thing went on forever.
Decades. Howard Hughes had multiple fake wills that were floating around, and I believe it was family members or friends that had kind of made up their own will that said, here's what he wanted to happen.
Because he also
Push
didn't
this one
have
through.
one.
That's
Correct.
right.
Yeah. They were all fake.
They were
And
all
so
fake.
everybody was out there trying to get their hands on some money at the end of the day. Had he had his own will in place, it might have made that process a whole lot simpler.
It took 34 years for that estate to be settled.
34
And-
years.
And because there was no estate plan, those intestacy laws kicked in. So his 11 cousins shared in his massive estate after 34 years.
That's crazy. It's crazy. It's just procrastination. Even famous people procrastinate, which is kind of crazy. And there, one more I want to bring up here because it was a big deal when it happened. Heath Ledger, Bobby. I mean, just didn't have things set up properly.
Yeah, I would have to say his will, he probably fed all of his stuff into a trust and forgot to add his new daughter.
Yeah.
As a beneficiary of the trust. And so there was a protracted legal battle that I think the court actually ruled against the daughter, but the family made it right and gave her some money. It's important when you talk about sibling or kids in estate planning. Oftentimes people want to name them individually, which is okay. But if you name them individually as beneficiaries, then you run into Heath Ledger's problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Why is this one not spelled out? You took the time to put the names of the other ones in. Is there a reason you left this one out?
Yeah.
In his case, no, there was no reason. He had an early death and just didn't get around to adding her.
Yep.
But if you have a blended family, foster kids and stepkids, if you don't legally adopt them, they don't have the same standing as your biological children.
Okay.
And so we often meet with clients that have blended families, stepkids, and they say, I want all of our kids to be treated equally. Right? You got to make sure that that's spelled out really, really clearly if you haven't adopted those kids.
I mean, you can divorce your grandchild if you're not careful here.
yeah.
I mean,
you could.
seriously, your son or daughter passes away, all of a sudden that daughter-in-law, son-in-law now inherit the money, and they get remarried and have new children.
Yeah,
I mean,
we talked
We've
about
seen it
this
happen.
yesterday. When you name a beneficiary, there's really two ways to do that. Right? You can name per capita beneficiaries, or you can name per stirpes beneficiaries. Now, what's the difference? Per stirpes allows. So I'm going to name Tim's my son. I named Tim a beneficiary per stirpes.
Thanks, Dad.
Well, if Tim has
started
kids.
early in life, didn't he?
Tim has kids. His kids step up and take his share if he predeceases me.
Gotcha.
Per stirpes. That's what most people want. Per capita, if I name Tim a per capita beneficiary and he passes away, his descendants are cut out.
Altogether.
His share goes to his other siblings.
That's right.
And Tim, really quickly, let's talk about this. What I think a lot of people don't realize: once you're in probate, it is public. Anybody can go and find out what's going on in your personal financial life.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we know about Howard Hughes. It's how we know about Heath Ledger and Prince and all these other scenarios that are out there. It's wide open. You can go down to the courts. I think Bobby talks about this quite often. You can take, I think it's like $10 or something.
$10.
Yeah.
Go down, buy a copy of anybody's will that you want to. They don't have to be related to you. You don't have to know them. Just anybody's will. You
Yeah,
can
I
go
love
and
it.
grab and find out what went where.
And we talked a lot about revocable trust earlier. One thing I left out is that is not a public document. And so if you have a properly structured will and revocable trust strategy, and I go down there and I want to be nosy with my $10,
You can't.
I can get the will,
Okay.
and the will just says Tim gave everything to his trust.
Okay.
So
Good
I
luck.
have
Have
no
fun.
idea what it is,
Okay.
who
Yeah.
got it.
I
just
gotcha.
wasted my $10 because Tim
Can I-
had a properly structured
I'm going
estate.
to throw in one last thing because we
Please
talked
do.
a little bit about it. We have individuals. We talked about naming individuals as beneficiaries. One of the simplest things you can do is just name a beneficiary on each account, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
You can just put them down as a beneficiary, even on non-qualified accounts through PODs and TODs. But if you do that, make sure that's who you want on there. I've run into cases where I'm sitting with a husband and his new wife, and his ex-wife is the beneficiary of his account. I'm sure that started a fight after they left our office.
Sure.
I've ran into cases where the advisor has been the beneficiary on an account before. Don't do that. Make sure
Wow.
you're looking at those and watching those. And I've seen cases where maybe somebody who they originally designated to be the beneficiary has passed away since that happened, and now it's going to nobody really. So
Tim, I'm glad you brought that up because my first to do is create and update your will. I mean, get that done. So when we come back, we're going to talk about how to do estate planning right. But if you're confused on all of this, guys, got two options for you. GIAplantoday.com. GIAplantoday.com. Go up in the top right-hand corner, take that legacy quiz. Or text the word legacy to 877-706-7526. Again, 877-705-7526. Text the word legacy. We'll get in contact with you. Make sure that you're getting everything set up the right way. Then come in and have a conversation with Tim and Bobby about your will and trust. When we come back, we're going to talk about how to do estate planning right. Stay tuned. Too many people enter retirement without a plan or a tax strategy, and it costs them. Every dollar you save from taxes is a dollar that can be put to work to help secure your retirement. At Guardian Investment Advisors, we have the experience and the expertise to create a customized financial strategy that includes smart tax planning. It's not about quick fixes or magic formulas. It's about building a comprehensive, tax-efficient plan. We're offering a no-cost portfolio and tax strategy review to get you started. Schedule an appointment with us today. You'll be glad you did. Welcome back to Plan the Day on Tomorrow. My name is Gary Thurman, your host, and I am here with my good friend Bobby Futch and my good friend Tim McDermott. Got Tristan over in the corner making sure we sound good for you guys on the radio, on YouTube, and we definitely appreciate you guys checking in and watching and listening to our show, Plan the Day on Tomorrow. Again, GIAplantoday.com, GIAplantoday.com. Lots of great information on there, including some of our events we have coming up. We're talking about estate planning today. We got one of those coming up in September right here at our office. So all of our information is on GIAplantoday.com. If you're interested in coming to that, give us a call. Love to have you. Also, you can text the word legacy to 877-706-7526 and get your legacy guide right now. So again, 877-706-7526. Text the word legacy. Gentlemen, I want to jump into how to actually do estate planning right. So what's the right way, Bobby? Go.
The first thing you need to do is put a balance sheet together.
Oh,
if you're working
okay.
with if you're working with a financial advisor, this should be really easy. You know, we have that document for most all of our clients, and if not, we can easily put one together for you.
Yep.
But that's the important place to start, because you need to put a plan together based on what assets you have, and that's just not a list. That's how they're titled, who owns those assets. Do you have joint owners? If there are beneficiary designations on that, we need to know all of that stuff.
Because your attorney's going to ask all of those questions, right?
That's right.
So for a larger estate, I mean, we've already made a decision. Everybody needs a will.
Right.
But if we have a larger estate, are we pushing the trust?
We can, and certainly it helps things be more fluid, right? When you have larger estates, things tend to change more often than normal folks like me, right? Mine is pretty cut and dry at this point. But as you get, assets that may be a business or maybe large life insurance policies, you want to be able to be nimble with those things, and a trust is a great way to do that.
I love that.
Provides the privacy. A trust can do, you can set up a will, you can set up a trust in your will, but it's usually a lot more nimble in a standalone revocable trust.
Is that not called a see-through trust?
A see-through trust, it refers to the taxation of those trusts.
Okay. Just
and
curious.
so it can be a see-through trust. As a matter of fact, a revocable trust, when you're still living, is. Because that trust doesn't file an income tax return. It doesn't pay its own taxes, so it sees through to you, and you pay the taxes. Again, it doesn't change. You were paying the taxes on your investments when you had them in your individual name anyway.
But if you're leaving IRAs to a trust, you want to make sure it has that see-through provision so that the tax consequences go to you and not tax like a corporation, correct?
Yes. But again, I'd have to have a pretty serious conversation about why you're leaving an IRA to a trust.
Right.
And sometimes it makes sense. If you have kids that, maybe have financial issues, substance abuse issues, special needs, those are all reasons to keep money in a trust. And if those come up, okay, it makes sense. We'll leave the IRA to the trust. It'll pay more taxes on that money, but it provides protections for those people. A lot of times, too, if you have, perfectly successful kids. Say one is a heart surgeon, right? Great, making a whole bunch of money, but that's kind of a high-risk profession. And if they get sued for a medical malpractice, that can be a big verdict. By leaving assets to them in trust, they don't own those assets, so they won't be subject to that lawsuit.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't have to always be a negative reason to set up a trust for somebody. There are reasons to help them protect themselves and their assets.
I love that. Tim, how important it is. Okay, so get your will, get your trust set up, get with a fiduciary advisor, get some help. How important is it to make sure you use the right powers of attorney?
Yeah.
That is big.
Having those power of attorneys, again, we talked about this a little bit a few segments ago, tells your loved ones what you want done when you're in a state of incapacitation or you can't make those decisions for yourself. I had a friend, unfortunately, who ended up in the hospital and passed about 14 months after that, and he had no power of attorneys, right? He was 27 when all this happened. Most 27-year-olds aren't thinking about putting together a power of attorney, but he went into a coma for 4 months, and his family couldn't even pay his car loan, so the car got repossessed, right? I mean, something as simple as paying off the car loan, and he got none of the cash that he put down on the car back, nothing. They just repossessed it, right? And it just made things really difficult. His family was finally able to work with his apartment complex to make sure he'd get his belongings back. But, you know, with a power of attorney, they could have gone down, paid rent, or canceled the lease, or whatever the case may happen. And so it was painful to watch it kind of go. They're already in a point where they're spending hours down at the hospital, sitting with their son every night, who's, you know, incapacitated. And now they can't even deal with his assets that he had.
It's so hard. Bobby, how important it is to review, update, especially when it comes to beneficiaries. We talked about having a life event. I mean, is it something people should be doing on a every other year basis, every 3-year basis?
So I think every time you have a change, a big life event, it should signal, hey, come talk to Guardian about my estate plan. You know, whether that's a new job, right? It may not affect your estate plan, but that's always a good kind of memory jogger to go, hey, let's go make sure this thing is still set up and does what I want it to do. Even if those things don't happen, every 3 to 5 years, you should sit down with us, with a financial advisor that understands these things, go back to the attorney that drafted it. Really, there's a lot of attorneys that feel so strongly about this, they will proactively reach out to their clients, you know, every couple, 3 years and say, hey, has anything changed? I'd like to come review this with you. Of course, they don't work for free, so a lot of people go, nah, I'm fine.
Right.
Man, take them up on that offer. They're the experts.
Man. Yeah.
And even if nothing's changed in your life, the legal framework changes all the time.
All the time.
You know, maybe there's a new strategy that was come up with that better meets your goals. Maybe tax laws change, so there's a more efficient way to pass on assets.
That's right.
Just because nothing's changed in your life doesn't mean that your estate plan hasn't been affected.
And I was about to ask Tim about that, coordinating the estate plan with retirement and tax strategies. I mean, that is such a big must to do.
Yeah, you got to take that estate plan, go down and see your advisor, come see us here at Guardian, tell us, say, hey, we've got this done. What do we need to do now? Because, like you said, if you never fund that trust, it's useless. You spent thousands of dollars for, you know, a paper book.
or better yet, you leave an asset in your will to your favorite nephew, and then you've got a beneficiary designation on that account that doesn't line up with that. I'm sorry, the beneficiary designation is going to rule
That's right.
every time. So your will in that regard does nothing, but complicates the issue.
I'm going to ask you guys, throw out some random questions at you here really quick. And the biggest thing I'm hearing right now is, guys, is if folks come in and work with us, we're going to help coordinate us as the financial advisors, the CPAs, the attorneys, but we just kind of put all the pieces together for people to make it easier on them. Bobby, what is the number one document most people are missing?
I would say most people that come in and say, yeah, I have an estate plan, they're talking, I have a will. The power of attorneys are huge. The financial power of attorney in particular is because when you're incapacitated, Tim shared a terrible story earlier.
Yeah.
Nobody can go to the bank to get your money, to pay your bills, to keep the lights on, to keep your car. The banks are just going to flat turn you down.
Right.
Even if you came in with that terrible story and it's completely true, they're going to go, man, I'm so sorry. I can't do anything for you.
It's good for security reasons, right?
Yeah.
But it makes things really difficult.
Yeah.
And that's a simple form to fill out.
What do you think people procrastinate, Tim, on getting an estate plan done?
We see time. We see disorganization, cost sometimes. All these things take some effort. You have to be intentional about what you're trying to do and get it done. And I know life gets busy. We go on vacation. We want to spend time with the kids. Work gets in the way. This is one of those things that's worth taking a few hours out of your
Oh,
day.
Well, let's
absolutely.
be frank. Who wants to plan for their own death?
No,
That's true.
nobody
right?
does.
That's
It's no fun.
That's a pretty bummer conversation
It
to
is,
have,
yeah.
right?
It took
But-
me, I don't know, it took me about 2 hours. I sat down with my wife. Like I said, I'm revamping mine right now, so I'm kind of in the middle of it. But I sat down with her for 2 hours the other night. We went through the whole questionnaire that my attorney sent over and filled out everything. I went into his office for about an hour and a half. And that's about all the time I'm going to have to put into it.
Right.
I'll have to
right.
go back
And
and
I
pick it up.
promise you, when you get that back, you're going to go, man, I'm glad I did that.
Yep.
It's taken care of. I know if the unfortunate thing happens, my kids and my family are taken care of.
That's
Man, you're always going to feel better on the back end than the tough conversations and just
Yeah.
the bummer.
So,
of
Bobby, I'm
thinking
going
about
to end this with you. Can an estate plan actually save families money?
Without a doubt. A good estate
100%.
plan can save money. More importantly, in my mind, it can also solve for discomfort and all these things, because those power of attorneys, they're going to be focusing on the person who's sick in the hospital, has had an accident. They want to spend time with you,
Yeah.
right? They don't want to have to additionally take all this extra time to go fight with the banks, fight with the hospitals, fight with the doctors and saying, Dad wanted this or Dad didn't
Right.
want this.
Right.
So, yes, it can save you money, but it can save you a lot of heartache. more
Estate
importantly,
planning is peace of mind.
without a doubt.
If you want to take care of your family when the good Lord takes you home, don't wait until it's too late, folks. Start being proactive now. Come in and sit down with Tim and Bobby. Let them review what you've got. Let's start putting the things together for you to make sure your legacy is set up properly. Text the word legacy, 877-706-7526. Again, the word legacy, 877-706-7526, and we'll send out our legacy guide to you today. Thanks for staying tuned for Plan Today on Tomorrow.